Welcome to the Monsters Magic. Hold on, take two. Take
Nailed it.
two. Welcome to the Monsters Madness and Magic podcast. I'm Justin, joined by my co-hosts Kelsey and Jason. Say hello, Kelsey and Jason.
What's up?
Hello.
And this evening we're joined by a very special guest, theater actor, director, and voice of Dart from Neat Village, the legendary Dragoon himself, Mr. John Butterfield. John, how the hell are you?
I'm good, man. Holding on.
Yeah, I think we all are at this point. So just to kind of ease in, why don't you take us back in time a little bit, John? You've been in theater for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Can you point to where you think this interest was sparked? Were you doing a lot of reading as a kid? What's going on?
No, I think when I was born in San Francisco and my parents were able to buy a house out in the burbs in Walnut Creek, and I think they chose that area because it had a really strong theater, sort of community theater base, and sort of threw me in it, and that was sort of it. I think I did theater from like the 7th grade on. So yeah, I never learned how to type, so this is my only it's my only way of making money, apparently. But yeah, did a lot of community theater, and it was really, I think the area at the time was sort of a really interesting place to be. There was Center Rep, and there was the Willis. There was like 3 or 4 really good community theaters, but also regional theaters as well that were paying, and so we all sort of graduated from one into the other. People I grew up with are, a good deal of them are still working in the theater, either in Los Angeles or in New York. So it was sort of a really magic time to be in that area. And I think it was sort of luck, but also a great way to sort of keep me occupied.
What years was this?
Okay. Let's see. I think we moved in the early 70s, because I was in the Music Man in 1976 as a choral member. I remember that.
Nice. One of my favorite musicals.
We actually had Robert Wilson come see the show, so that was pretty awesome. We all got
That's
to meet
awesome.
him. Yeah, so from then on, easily in 1976 throughout,
Okay.
but before, like, at the early 70s.
So were you teaching theater as well too at one point? Or were you
I was doing some for the City of Walnut Creek later when I was in high school, college, doing some movement classes for them, historical movement, as well as dance, and coaching some theater. And I was acting, but oddly enough, I started to get more work as paying work as a dancer than I did as an actor, which is sort of unheard of, but men are still a hot commodity in the dance world. So I was probably offered contracts before I was really ready for them, but I'm certainly not complaining. So that sort of carried me through. Yeah, so I did that for a while and kept working in theater. And right around, like in the 80s, I had gone through the Drama Studio of London at Berkeley, had done some summer stock and some touring, and the AIDS crisis hit, and local theater and a lot of people were still in the area. We did about 5 or 6 annual benefit Celebration for Life to raise money for local AIDS foundations. And
right?
I put together a work for the first or the second one. And from there, we were approached to say, well, do you have a body of work? Well, I don't now, but I will. And that's when New Urban Dance Company formed, and we were together for 14 years. So I had my own pickup company as well as dancing for other people. And that just continued. And then from there, we morphed into a theater company. And
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that what led to you making
going back to, yeah.
Yeah.
And while I was, we were always looking for contract work because we were all starving anyway. But my sister was dating Jim Lippert at the time, and he got the contract to do Legend of Dragoon and auditioned me, and I got the role. It was fascinating because I'd never done anything like it. I understood the process of voiceover. I'd done some technical work, some, training videos for longs or something. But getting there and watching it happen and I don't know if you guys spoke to the guy who did the villain. I think he was the bad guy. It was fucking amazing watching him do his takes. His whole face was like rubber and animated, but his enunciation was incredible. And the watching him use his voice was incredible. And I certainly stole some tips from him. Just watching it. It was a bizarre experience, I have to say, because the whole there was a PlayStation crew in the booth with Jim, representing, I think, Japan, or the company, and they would say, "Could you say this like this? Because in Japanese it sounds like this." And I'm like, "Okay," which was weird.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and they wanted it to sound. I think they wanted it to sound very similar to their first release. At least that's what I assume. They sent me a copy of the game, and I sort of missed that boat as far as computer games or video games and all that, because I was working all the time. But my mates, Maureen, she played the game, and and so I brought it to her house, and we had a bottle of wine and laughed a great deal. I said, "Make me do it again." So that was sort of hilarious. And she later bought me, I guess there was an action figure, which I can't find, but I've got it unpacked somewhere, of Dart. And then, of course, she got me my shirt, my Dart shirt.
Oh,
see,
goodness.
that's awesome. You should wear that
It
a
was
lot.
actually cool. And I was stopped actually before COVID. I was at the market, and someone stopped me and said, "Oh, did you work on that?" I said, "Yeah, I did the voice." And she was like, "Oh my God, it was a great game." I went, "Okay." I guess because it's so foreign to me, and I know that it did really, really well. And Maureen's been sort of tracking it, my mate, and it's one of the things that people keep saying they wish they would sort of convert to the new system so that people could play it. It was wild. And I totally enjoyed it, and I loved watching myself do things. And of course, I wish I had anime hair, but all those things sort of pass up. But Jim was great, and if you get a chance, you should totally talk to him. He's got his doco out, which is really great, Crip Camp, and it's shortlisted for the academies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's been working, and that's been a labor of love of his for a really long time. This doco, I think it's really about his childhood, but really incredible sound guy and ridiculously generous. And he did some work for my dance company. He mixed some things for us gratis. He was just a great guy, and is doing really well. So it's totally exciting, and I bet he'd love to chat with you guys. So you should totally find him.
So it sounds like that a lot of you guys are still friends. Are you kept in contact after working together? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, Jim is a great guy, and I know he got buried in his work, and then I left the country. I did my bachelor's. I got to obviously I'm older than when I hit around 40, I was dancing for 2 or 3 different companies, and my body was informing me that I think perhaps it's time to stop. When you crawl to the shower to sit in the shower so you could go downstairs and warm up and tour. Yeah, I was sort of all funned out. So there was this great program through St. Mary's out here in California, and I know she's implemented it across the US. It's for working dancers, and primarily she had targeted ballet dancers because they go right from high school into companies. So I could get my degree and still tour and still work. So I got my bachelor's there, and then wanted to sort of continue on. And one of my colleagues said, well, she had just done, she'd just gotten her union card through Berkeley Rep and had worked with the director who had worked in New Zealand. So they've just started this directorial program. You should apply. And I did, not thinking that I was going to make it. And I did. So that was alarming and exciting. But, and that changed really how I looked at pretty much theater in general. And it really changed my work. it's an incredible place, and Toy Fakari is an incredible school. They put out some amazing people, and their programs are crazy good. They're costing people, like she has 8% higher, they get jobs almost immediately.
Wow.
And it's, of course, it's an island, so everything's condensed, and Karen, who runs the costume department, is brilliant. But they come out really, really strong. They're all working in the industry and really good folk. Funny. But yeah, so I went to New Zealand, did that, came back, started my theater company, went back to finish my degree, and then came back and was going to start another company. And of course, all that got shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still in the process of putting it together. Mates of mine in New Zealand are building my website, and we've got 2 full scripts, 2 adaptations ready to go.
Awesome.
But we're just waiting to be able to get back into the rehearsal room. And I know with vaccinations, it's all coming around. It's just,
Right.
Jesus Christ, it's taken for fucking. But yeah, and it's been sort of, that's been pretty much the journey. And I'm always surprised when people mention Legend of the Dragoon.
So, what would you say are the biggest differences between theater in New Zealand and theater in the States?
I would say here you can mount a production and it can tank, and that might be the end of you. And it's a little hard to get over. Whereas in New Zealand, I think people are like, all right, we'll give it a go. If it doesn't work, what did you learn from that? Try it again, or maybe try something different. It's not going to wipe you out financially, and it's not going to destroy your rep. And they're very much more willing to, they're very much about new work and building new theater and devising and building stuff. So everyone's trying to make their own theater out there. And of course, they're able to do that again, which is great, but makes me quite jealous. That's sad.
So
But there's some great stuff, some really, because they don't necessarily have huge budgets. It was another lesson I sort of learned there. You just make do, and like Trick of the Light theater company performs in like bookstores and small venues, and they do amazing.
Do you feel like there's more room for experimentation?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely, and I think I'll probably catch back to this. I think the problem with American theater, especially American actors, is we're really caught up. We're really sort of in that cult of the method, and it's all about this emotional life. Whereas I think most New Zealand training is still hooked to the UK training so there's technical training and then there's emotional training, but how do you get to that emotion technically and respond to what's in front of you, and to use that and not bring yourself out. Like if you have to have a breakdown and you're in a union contract, that's Tuesday through Sunday, twice a day. You've got to figure out how to physically portray that and not kill yourself. And I think American theater is still wrapped up in the method about, well, I've got to find that emotion. I've got to find that sense memory. It's like, no, you don't. I think it's great for film. I think it works really good for film because it's such an intimate process. But on stage, I think you can do the same thing technically. If you're present, that's great. But I think they're a lot more courageous, and they're a lot more willing to just sort of take a risk or just give it a whirl. And I think, and they don't, at least from my school point of view, the performers that I worked with and the people that I see go out, they'll make an offer in rehearsal, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. They go on and they give you another one, and they give you another one, and they give you another one. Whereas I think in the US, sometimes people get really attached to their offer. It's like, I think the character should do this, or what about this? And if it's shut down because it doesn't work with the overall view of the work, then it's not a personal attack. It's just like, it just doesn't work. Let's move on and find something that does work. So working as a director in New Zealand and working as a director in the US has been a real interesting thing. And when I brought my theater company together, Butterfield 8, which is still going under B8, a new artistic director, we had sort of it was more of an ensemble. I mean, it was more of like a company of players, and we all sort of, and I got to sort of establish that relationship with those actors of like, let's just focus on the work and the offers. And I think we did some really good work. And I certainly learned a lot. And because it was a small venue, it's great. Carol Davis, owner of Q Live Productions, it's a converted pool hall bar into a small sort of like music venue where you could rearrange the furniture. And that's where we performed for 10 years. So it was great. And so it spoiled me. I don't want to work in big venues anymore because I think the audience, you lose something. I mean, it's great for a spectacle, but smaller venues,
right?
The actor doesn't check out, but also you as an audience member, you're right in it. Like actors are coming in and out.
Yeah.
Literally up your aisle, you know, you could reach out and touch them.
I feel the same way about concerts, you know, because a lot of metal bands in Europe, they perform at these large festivals, but the same bands will come over to the United States and we'll have to go see them at a bar, and it's a much more intimate show, and I much prefer that. You know,
yeah,
you don't get that.
You're right there. You can reach out and you can see their hands and everything, and much more engaged. You feel much more of a personal connection, I think, to the performer in that way. And you don't have to, and you don't kind of check out. And it's all about the lights and the fireworks. It's about the music.
Right.
As a consumer of theater, as like a theater participant, I kind of completely gave up on the big theater companies around here and started going to the little black box stuff, because it's like I had seen Much Ado About Nothing 50 times and I don't fucking care anymore. And so if somebody was doing something like interesting or subversive or queer,
right,
like it was in a black box theater. So I love those venues that are just, it's a bar or a music venue during the day and the furniture is moved. There's so much more food in there.
And now it's a challenge, right? To keep the audience sort of engaged in the world that you're trying to create. I have a good mate who's actually scoring both of our new projects. He's a professor of musicology at San Jose State, and it's really hard because he's working on a performance paper for these kids, and they have to do a performance, but of course they can't do public performance. So we're filming it all, and I'm trying to come up with ways to make it sort of less a classroom and more like a Baroque stage.
Right.
So, and that's exciting and lovely. It's everyone trying to make things happen, but I think that it'll be very interesting to see what happens, especially as we come out of this, because the large venues have, because theaters shut down, and are they still paying rent? I think it'll be easier to move into a smaller venue and keep something going and keep something afloat than it is to sort of support this huge building, which is, and you've got New York, which is full of nothing but large theater institutions. So I think it's going to be a real interesting couple of years coming out of it. But I think hopefully we're going to get some really exciting work, because I think the things that really excite people, Rent was in a small venue when it first started, and all kinds of stuff that came out of small venues that went on to New York, I think were exciting. They started with just a small group of folk.
I mean, once this blows over a bit more, people are going to be hungry for theater.
Oh yeah, I think they're going to just be hungry to be able to be outside seeing people, talking to people, without shouting at them from 6 feet away. And I think that's going to be great for the industry, for all of us, actually.
Yeah, and even from like a non-consumer, someone that's a creative, usually times of a tribulation like a global pandemic will definitely spark the creative processes. A lot of screenwriters and stuff are at home and nailing out 40 pages a day because they can't go anywhere.
I got nothing else to do.
It's also going to make like a big impact, I think, on everyone's brains. Like, we're going to see a lot of art about isolation coming up soon.
It's going to be so interesting generationally to see what comes out of this. It's like, what will have marked this year, or sort of the formative year, or kids in high school right now, or artists who are trying to find something, or the generation just sort of going through it. What is that going to say, or how are they going to sort of express that years from now? It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Definitely. So, John, aches and pains aside, go ahead. You're about to say
I was
something.
just going to ask, so what can you guys tell me about of Legend of the Dragoon and what made it a good game? I guess what made it a good experience.
Oh,
I did a little bit of homework. I'm going to jump ahead and go first here. I did a little bit of homework on the sort of legacy of Legend of the Dragoon amongst the gaming community, as it were. I did some polls on social media, just sort of like what everyone's impression, what their feelings of it are. And it's a game that everyone has heard of, but very, very few people have played. And it has a reputation as being very, very dense. It's very systems dense. And
Okay.
Somebody compared it to like the Ulysses of Japanese
Oh
role-playing
wow!
games.
Okay,
It's a game that a lot of people have pretended that they've played,
They've read
or
it, but they haven't actually played it.
I've got my copy from when I was 11 years old right here.
Oh
And
my god!
it's 4 discs long, and a lot of people say I played the first half of the disc, and then I told everyone I played Legend of the Dragoon. And you know, this is a game that takes 90 hours to get through. It's incredibly dense. So it has this reputation as just being incredible, but sort of unreachable. Also because there hasn't been a remaster. All of the classic Final Fantasy games have all since gotten remasters and come out in various forms, and this can only be played on old hardware. And that's only sort of increased its reputation as this like dense, this story dense lost gem of
mystery
gaming.
of the law. So is that, you'll have to excuse my ignorance, games now, RPG games, games of this sort now, like the Final Fantasy games, does it take you, what's the time limit, I guess, or what's the time expectancy to get through it, as opposed to Legend of Dragoon?
So the benchmark that a lot of people say for video games in general is you want 30 hours out of it to get your money's worth.
Wow. Okay.
Which that has ballooned up and up. I think your Super Mario's and your Sonic the Hedgehogs, people can get through those in about an hour. And so the long form narrative stuff has kind of blown up. And so we do expect games to be longer now. But at the time, this was of an unprecedented length.
Holy
yeah. So I think now probably if you look at something like The Witcher, that's probably a 90-hour game. It's probably about the same length.
Right.
But in the year of our Lord 2000, you know, it was also made by an unusually large team. This is back when dev teams were usually under 100 people. Wow. And one of the big things about Legend of the Dragoon is it had a 300-person development team.
I had
no
idea. That's amazing.
And there's a lot of hand-drawn art and a lot of the background stuff, and it has this reputation as being this magnum opus that never got a sequel, never really went anywhere. But
it's still tinkered with.
It's still like stuck in everyone's. I didn't talk to anybody who hadn't heard of it. I just also didn't talk to anybody who had played it. But I'm saying there's two handsome boys right here who have played it, Justin and Jason, and these are the only other people I've ever met that have actually played this fucking game all the way through.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, me and Jason have known each other since 6th grade, so he's the only person I've known that's played this game as well my entire life.
Wow. How do you think it holds up as opposed to other games?
Like Kelsey said, like even for today, Legend of Dragoon is ridiculously ambitious. Like you have games these days that are just barely scraping up against like proper 300-person dev teams, and even the latest RPG Cyberpunk 2077 that only tops out at like 70 hours. So it's not even close to like the type of ambition that Legend of Dragoon had.
Wow, that's amazing. It's cool to know because I mean, when we did the voices, we were just coming in, we did the contract, and we left. I don't know if any of them were gamers at all, but you know, we all kind of went on and didn't really think about, foolishly, I think, what was the end product and how did it last, and it's kind of cool to know that it's had this sort of staying power, of this sort of iconic status in its own way.
It's a game that if it wasn't special, it would have been forgotten by now. I sincerely believe that.
And is anyone like who owns it, and is no one? What would be the drawbacks of trying to convert it to a new system or a new playing system?
All
I
right,
did
so
not know that question.
as far as I know, Sony still owns the IP, and I would assume that their main like hang up in not getting it remastered is that it was a very dense, expensive game even for its time, and budgets have only ballooned since
Yeah.
then. So yeah.
And even a
I would-
game that one of the most popular games of all time is Final Fantasy VII, and it's just now getting the remake treatment, and it's taken them 5 to 10 years to even do that. So
Wow.
So the reason that it's so hard to remaster is that it was made during an era where they would have static backgrounds they would create through a combination of painting and digital art and compositing and all kinds of things. They would create a very detailed background, and then they would put these very low poly 90s PlayStation 1 sprites on top of the background.
Okay.
It's very, or not sprites, but character models. It's very, very easy to remaster and upscale those models, but it's very, very hard to do the backgrounds. So Final Fantasy,
the thing that's really huge.
yeah. So some of the Final Fantasy games worked the same way, and the way that they typically get remastered is they take all those large, they're essentially matte paintings, like in a movie, and they have to just redo them. There have been games where they've had to repaint them bit by bit. But the thing is that in a typical RPG experience, you may have 50, 60 of those screens, and this has thousands. So it would be a titanic undertaking.
And they don't keep, I guess nobody kept any of the archival stuff that they could possibly get back.
That's a big issue from that time as well. Developers very rarely kept source code or any type of archives for the games at all. Like Square Enix didn't have any sort of version check until the PS2 days, I believe. So that's a big issue. Yeah.
That's kind of wild to think, but I guess coming from a different sort of mindset about that. I mean, even in theater, you always archive your work in some way, and especially because it's ethereal, right? It's like you're doing a performance. It's not necessarily film, but you want to film it so that you either remember it. I mean, for dancers, we were using it all the time. It's like Elizabeth Escavio, an old mate of mine, had to learn Swan Lake from the video, or R&J, and she just had to watch that and get up and go. So it's a great way to sort of archive your own work, and I guess you just assume that other creatives or other people in that in creative industry, and gaming isn't a creative industry, would somehow want to archive their work in some way or hang on to it. But I guess also you're working for a company like Sony, they have ultimate control as to what's saved, what isn't saved, and how they store their documentation.
John, while we're on the subject of Dart, when's the last time you stubbed your toe or something and just went Madness Hero or something?
Oh, what is it like? What's the other one? Flaming Rush?
Double slash.
Yeah. Occasionally, when Maureen and I get pretty hammered, Flaming Rush. Yeah, it's
that's great.
Those things stayed, and you know, of course, Maureen, my maid, she was very much into anime, and so I got sucked into that and watching it and thinking, oh, I was kind of doing that, and or I need to sound more like that. It was kind of wild. Yeah, but we will have a giggle every once in a while, or she'll say something to me, or she'll shoot me another T-shirt. Or
were those long days? Were there a lot of takes when you were?
It was all in one day. I came out, of course, as
wow.
Yeah, I did it in one day. I think that was the deal. We all went in. Yeah, I just came out with a very. I sounded like Brenda Vaccaro. Anyone who remembers who she is, but yeah, I sounded like I had a cigarette, gin. But I was in there for a while and shouting and screaming and doing those takes again and again. And I think I should have had better training to know how to use my voice in that sort of situation, which is why the guy who played the villain is so amazing. That's right. I didn't. He was working. Jim hired me. Jean, my sister, who was also, she's one of the voices as well.
Your sister?
Yeah, she's one of the, I think, the minor characters. I can't remember, but I know that she did some voice work for it as well.
Wow, it's all in the family. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's right.
Y'all are the Dragoons.
Yeah, yeah, but you should totally hit up Jim. I know that he would love to chat with you about it, because it was like a one-day event for me.
Wow, that's
and for
crazy.
Jean, and I think people went in. I mean, I know that he recorded over several days, but they tried to be down and dirty and quick with it, because I think they were paying us hourly. I don't even remember how much I made for it. It wasn't that much, but it was something. So if you
Now I
want
sort of understand your confusion when I emailed you, because
yeah,
it's
it was
like,
like, dude, it's like,
it wasn't just a 1 gig thing; it was a 1 day thing.
Yeah. I mean, we came in, we did it, and we were done. Yeah.
So you mentioned something I want to circle back to, which was that you were getting voice direction to try to mimic the cadence of the original Japanese voice lines more.
Yep.
There's this reputation that American voice acting in Japanese games have of having strange inflections or even being stilted. And for certain game series is like the Silent Hill games, that sort of becomes part of the feeling of the game, is the slightly people talk about the dialogue in Silent Hill as if it's Lynchian, because it's got the same sort of cadence as a David Lynch movie, where it's very, very stilted. And now I'm sitting here wondering, does the voice acting sound unnatural because there was that like attempt to match it to the cadence of the Japanese?
I think at that time, that was the goal of, there was like 3 execs in the booth listening to all of us. And I'm pretty sure that was their goal, was to make it sound as close to the original as they could.
Because there's some kind of weird. I replayed the game in preparation for this, and there aren't a lot of voice lines. I think the reason you probably remember there being a lot of voice lines is you hear them so fucking many times, thousands of times over and over, and so you really start
father, yeah, at some point.
Yeah. So there are little weird enunciations and stuff, and now I'm very interested in that.
I do remember it's odd actually, when you guys shot me the email, it is something that I do remember quite well, just because it was so foreign, with the folks in the booth coaching me to sound in a specific way, or could you do it a little more like this, and not knowing but there was never an example. It was interesting, like they never played me. I never got a playback of what the original Japanese sounded like or anything like that, so they just said go. And you kind of did, and you're like, all right, this isn't, like, they would let me know, this is an attack, you're hurt, or this, they'd give me a few adjectives, and sort of, you're off to the races. But yeah, it's interesting too, when you look at, I remember, what was it, it's like when Princess Mononoke came out, and I think Disney had bought it, and they released it with American voiceover. And I had seen it in the theater with the original Japanese actors. And I went, I don't want to hear it. I can read subtitles. I'd rather I'd rather experience it as it was originally built. And I don't mind reading it.
Right.
But, that's a huge industry now. I know lots of people that's how they're getting by. They're doing voiceover work. And a lot of good stock actors continue to do voiceover work. Like Mark Hamill was with the Joker for Batman. Yeah. And all sorts of stuff. So it just sort of keeps you employed. It's not anything I pursued, I guess, just because I didn't think my voice was that interesting, or that, I wasn't really trained in that way. But I have known some people who've done books on tape or books on disc, and and I've done other things, but not a lot of gaming voices. I guess it's a different market. Not sure.
So, John, in a perfect world, if you didn't have the aches and pains, do you have a preference when it comes to directing or acting?
If I I enjoy directing. I enjoy it's a control thing. I get to decide what happens as a director, not for everything, but you get to have a strong vision of the work. And we're building two pieces right now. A good friend of mine, a company member, who adapted Pride and Prejudice for us, a two-play cycle, which I took back to NZ for a classmate of mine, and now we're doing Persuasion. But I'm also doing Parties by Carl Van Vechten, which is about this group of people in Prohibition New York who are pretty much drunk from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, and have really outrageous things happen and amazing dialogue. But I know where I want to go with it, and especially for Parties, I want to mix in movement and text a lot, very much like DV8 does. They're a brilliant company. But to be able to sit down and have the control of being able to create the entire thing is very exciting. I would like to be able to dance the way I did when I was, in my 20s, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I take bar twice a week, and that's great, and I do some working out. But it's hilarious when you're at home doing a Zoom class, or it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. So we take the Dutch National Ballet class, and you get to curse and swear, which isn't something you normally do in a ballet class. Like, he'll show you the exercise. Well, I'm not fucking doing that. I can tell you that right now. Things that you're not allowed to do in a regular class. So that spoiled me in a way. I would love to be able to get back to that. And I think what's been interesting about COVID was that I kept meaning to get back to class, and now because of COVID, I've gotten back to class. I'm taking it twice a week and working out twice a week on Zoom with my mates. So I feel actually I'm in better physical shape, but I'm not jumping anymore. Fuck that. It was funny too, because we're looking back at our archives, because just before COVID, we were going to have a reunion of the dance company. We all thought, we could do a little concert of work, and we all went back to look at our work and like, why are we jumping so much? Whose fault was that? That was mine. So yeah, when I did my master's work at Toy, it was a combination of movement and dialogue and sort of all about gender. But working with the dancers was amazing. And the School of Dance there is brilliant. Their contemporary program is off the chart. Fearless dancers. And so that was a boon. So to be able to be in the room with them and work with them is always great. And I don't miss performing as much. I've had to in the last couple of years off and on, but it's not something, I don't know. And I think it always goes back to self-confidence or self-consciousness about, you haven't done it for so long.
Right.
I would really need a director that I trusted, and probably get my butt back into a class or a technique class of acting, just to work on something. But, we're always reading and trying to see other things, and that always informs you about how you want to build your own work. I think my performing days are. If I could do voice work again, I think I would, because it's kind of wild to see it, I'm in awe of whenever Maureen pulls it out. It's like, well, there you are.
And you got weirdos hitting you up like 30 years after you do your work.
Yeah. Okay. And it's funny too, because I don't think anybody got, and those were the days you went in, it was a one-off deal. I don't think anyone got residuals from that at all. We all just got a flat fee, and that was it.
So after you did that one day working on Legend of Dragoon, when was the next time you heard about it? Like, just when was the next time it came back up for you?
Well, when it I guess when it hit the market, we all got sort of a complimentary copy, and then Maureen played it, and then that was sort of it. But having worn the T-shirt out in public a couple of times, people have said, "Oh, that was a great game," or "I love that game." I was like, "Okay."
That's when you need to yell at them and just go double slash, and then
Yeah. The one girl I told, I was like, "Well, I worked on it. I did the voice of Dart." She goes, "Oh my god, that's cool." Yeah, and I guess that's when I started to realize that there was a lot more to it. I've had people, good friends of ours. He codes for games and does. I think his whole thing was he takes old arcade games and transfers them into new formats so that you can play Centipede and all those sort of things. We had talked about it. He goes, "Oh yeah," because they had immigrated to New Zealand when I was there, and we talked about it. He goes, "Oh no, it's a really good game, and it's sort of legendary in its own way." I went, "Okay," and I guess because I'm not connected to the world, that that genre or that world or that sort of universe, it hadn't really sort of hit me that the game had done so well and had become sort of its own opus. To hear that it's sort of like the Ulysses of it's cool. My dad read Ulysses. I got past the first 3 pages and went, "Yeah, I think I'll pass." So
I did not make it through Ulysses.
but it's, I have a lot of living and working in New Zealand. You meet the industry is right there in Wellington. Wada is right there. As you pass,
Mhm.
you drive out to Miramar, you see the big green screen that they've got out in the back lot, and everybody's working in one way or another. I mean, they employ huge amounts of people, and so that and science fiction genre and the fantasy genre. Like when I first got to New Zealand, they had just premiered The Return of the Kings, and Courtney Place is sort of their main drag in Wellington, and there's the Reading Theatre, and then the I've forgotten the name of the other theatre, but on the upper stories of them, they had full-sized ring raids and their mounts just sort of
Wow.
looking down on the street. So you're kind of aware that there's a whole other, and I know it's a very lucrative business. And a good friend of mine she's manager for NerdBot, Mab, Marianne Butler, is sort of keeping me in the loop as to what's going on game-wise and other things. And so I get to hear it, but I guess because I don't experience it, I am sort of unaware of the impact that it has. It's exciting to know that it is its sort of own legendary thing, that I had a small part in it. It's sort of like very cool.
Huge part.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the guy.
Wild. I just wish I had his hair.
Good hair.
Yeah, great anime hair. But it's fun. I mean, freely admit I'm a complete sci-fi fantasy nerd myself, so it's exciting to know that it's doing well and that it's done well, and that it maybe shaped some other games or helped in that way. But yeah, that's cool.
John, say you've got someone that's looking to get their start in theater these days. What would your advice to them be?
Good luck.
Yeah. I think, have patience, certainly, and be smart about the roles that you take or the work that you take. But if you want to go to school, really look at, if you're going to want to go to university, look at places that have a really good recidivism rate, like who gets hired out of that school, and what are the networks sort of connected to that school. I think I was really surprised and certainly lucky to go to Toy, because it creates a whole network of people, colleagues, and camaraderie, actually. that's not only just about the business, but about but about the craft as well. And we're always, whenever I go back, it's like, it's lovely to fall back into a group of people that all talk the same way about the work. So that's great. And I think if you can find that, then you're set, and understand the benefits of theater, live theater and film, and how they feed each other. Because I think that the actors that I look up to and regard as really amazing actors are actors who constantly go back to stage work, and talk about how that informs their film work, and how it keeps them sort of on their toes. And they're always working. And that's the goal, isn't it? I guess, to be working and making a living at it. Of course, Meryl Streep has done some stage work, but you look at her early work, she was constantly on the stage and then going back to film and stage and film and stage and film. Kate Blanchett's brilliant. And she, saved regional theater in Melbourne. Her and her husband run a theater there. And so she's constantly going back to do stage work. And I think that informs her. It makes her a braver performer, I think. She takes bigger risks.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Radcliffe, after Harry Potter, went and did a bunch of stage work. And
Yeah.
then immediately after that, his film output was all really strange, interesting, experimental movies. So,
and I think that was awesome. He could, pretty much call his own shots and didn't have to take a film contract because he was starving or really needed the work or the exposure. He got to pick. And it's sort of wild to look at what he's done. Film watch, you're like, okay, Daniel, wow.
That's how he ended up having a supporting role as a farting corpse in that one movie.
Right. And then what was the last one he did where his hands have been
Guns Akimbo.
Guns Akimbo.
Yeah, Guns Akimbo.
He was also in Horns, where he grew some sexy demon man horns.
The Lady in Black.
That's right.
Lady in Black was part of the Hammer Renaissance.
That's right.
All good shit. And that was all after he did Equus and
wagged his weenie on stage. Yep,
wagged his
weenie. Like, there you go. You want to see all of Daniel? There you go.
I bet he nailed that role, and that's all anyone talks about is his peepus.
I love the Hammer franchise, man. I mean, I grew up on that stuff. It was great. Every Saturday night, we'd watch Creature Feature, and there'd be some bad English horror.
Kelsey's over here smiling just because he's a Hammer horror freak, and
I am. I'm in the process of watching all 80 movies right now.
Oh,
it's quite the undertaking.
It's so cool.
But Sir Christopher Lee he's my icon, man. He's everything. He's
brilliant stuff.
Beautiful and fierce and intimidating and perfect.
So I don't know how old you guys are, but when we were watching Creature Feature ages ago in the 70s and 80s, it's like in the 70s, I guess Logan's Run had just come out, and then Star Wars had its preview. And so we were watching Creature Feature one night, and he goes, wait, I'm going to show you this preview. We don't know what it's going to be. And I thought my brain was going to explode. There was a scene of C-3PO getting his oil bath, I guess, in the desert, and he comes back out, and we thought it was and the theater. It's like, we have to see this. The days you could sit through 2 matinees and not pay for the second one. But no, Hammer's fucking brilliant. I love that stuff. I mean, one of the first full-length things that we did for the dance company as a sort of joint production, we did sort of a contemporary ballet with readers of Dracula, and of course Hammer was a big influence. I mean, I still love a really good scary flick. I really
so cool.
want to. What's the one that's coming out? I keep waiting for it to come out.
The Green Knight.
The Green Knight or Antlers? Is that I think Del Toro produced it. It's about a Wendigo, I think. It looks really.
That sounds up my alley,
creepy.
But I'm not familiar with it.
I think it's horns or antlers or something along that line. It's one, but I saw the preview a while ago and I went, oh my God, that's going to scare the pee out of me. I got to go see that.
So while we're on the subject, what are your favorite horror movies?
I guess Mimic, certainly, because it broke the rule. They killed kids in it, and you're like, oh, you can't do that. Of course it did. Oh, what is that great? I always get it wrong. The title. It's a Hammer flick where they find a spaceship. They're excavating a London tube station, and they find a spaceship, and it's all about Martians. And
That sounds
Anyway.
wicked familiar, but I'm not
Yeah.
putting my mind
of course, I
on
love for the camp quality. I love the Dr. Fives, just as a
Mhm.
hoot. Oh, The Haunting of Hill House.
Mhm.
With that's a great one, and it's in black and white.
Is that Vincent Price?
No, The Haunting. What is that?
I was thinking of a different house.
With Julie Harris.
You might be thinking of The
and,
Haunted Palace, Kelsey.
It's awesome. We saw it as kids, and it scared the pee out of us. And I have a copy of it. It's based on a Shirley Jackson story.
Wow.
Haunting of Hill House. They made a remake, which was not so much.
Usually the case with remakes.
Yes. Gothic horror. Yes. Tell me about the film. Anyway, that one definitely. 1963 was the film. It's really good, and because I think you don't really see the ghosts, you hear it, and there's an occasional effect, but I guess it's it leaves it up to your imagination, and that's always
I've seen
great.
the movie you're talking about. It's called The Haunting,
Yes,
and it's beautiful. It's
It is.
the shadows, just black and white's easy mode for getting beautiful shadows in horror.
yes,
but
yes,
it's really,
yes.
really beautiful atmosphere in that movie.
It's gorgeous.
I thought about it many years.
You look at Cat People, which is not perhaps the best film, but the shadows and the way they use light, because they didn't have a budget at all. You're like, that's awesome. Boris Karloff's The Mummy. Got some classics. The Gorgon, the
The Gorgon.
the Hammer flick.
I looked up the movie you were describing earlier about the London tube station and the aliens, and I believe it's called Quartermass in the
Yes.
Pit.
The
Yes, Quartermass.
There were 2 sequels to that. I think the Quartermass Experiment. I haven't gotten to them on my list yet, or else I'd know everything about
Oh my
it.
god! I didn't know there were 2 sequels made. I've only seen the first one. It's a great concept. Some of the special effects aren't brilliant, but it's good and it's totally creepy.
I mean, the way you describe the concept, that's right up my alley. I'm gonna watch this tonight. So
I have a huge soft spot in my heart for Hammer's special effects. There's so much papier-mâché
Yes,
going
it's
on
like,
in those movies.
we'll make it really quick.
Just beautiful.
I think contemporary wise, the series that I found super disturbing was Hannibal. I thought the art direction for it was off the chart brilliant, and making cannibalism look really, really delicious.
Mads Mikkelsen is great too.
Yeah, it was great acting, and I thought the writing was good, and just the atmosphere that they created with it was really outstanding, and terrifying. It was great, but wow, yeah.
That show's almost more about body sculptures than it is about anything else. It just became like sculpture eventually.
We're gonna put antlers on it, and it's gonna look great. Yeah, and it did. And of course, it's like he's doing his own cooking show whenever he's. They just film it like we're watching Julia Child or some.
I'd probably let Mads Mikkelsen eat me. I'd let him just go for it.
Oh, totally. He's hottie.
He is. He's a dancer too.
Yeah, he's got a new film out about drinking. I think it's looks hilarious about day drinking. And
so I have one more thing I want to ask you about before
please, yes.
Justin cuts me off.
Right,
I wanted to talk to you about your gender swapped Othello.
Oh God.
I've seen a lot of adaptations of Othello. I like Shakespeare's more problematic plays, like The Taming of the Shrew and Othello, and the ones that in general whether or not he knew it, he was examining gender when he wrote those.
Yeah.
And I've seen a version of Othello that took place during the Iraq War with all the characters being soldiers. It was
Right,
one
that
of the
was the
worst things I've ever seen.
Oh no! I think that was the National Theater, man. Ooh. It was difficult.
Yeah, they came through town. It was a touring thing. And
Yeah.
it was one of the stupidest fucking things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, I haven't seen that version. We did it. I think we bit off a lot more than we could chew. In one respect, it worked and it didn't work. We learned a lot from it. It was a really good experience, but we fell down pretty hard. But saying that as well, it was like in a string of things we had done an all male and all female cast of 12th Night in rep. So one night is all the boys doing it, next night is all the girls doing it, and that was exceptional. And that was also my last vanity piece. I was going to play viola before I was way too old to fucking do it, and she's my hero. But Othello was hard, but it really opened up a bunch of ideas for me. I think I had a great gal playing Othello from Toy that I had known. She was the third year when it was the first year, and I played Amelia just because I wanted that last monologue. That's my motivation. But that was more and more a big part of what I was trying to find in my own work, and what I hope to continue is sort of exploring how gender is performed on stage and how we perform gender. I think it's exciting, and I love to see it when it's successful. I think we had some really good moments in it, but inevitably, I think it's epic. It's like Hamlet and Lear. It's
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Everest of Shakespeare. You're like, oh, okay. And
Othello's rough stuff. It's rough emotionally. It's
yeah. Everybody dies.
Everybody dies. But it is still one of my favorites. I've seen very few versions of it that I liked, but I still keep coming back to Othello. So when I read that you've done an alternate version of it, I was like, I've never seen like a version looking more at the gender side of things. And because usually when people try to deconstruct it, it's around the racial element of the play.
Right. But I think it's really more, I mean, and certainly that's valid, but I also think women can be strong. And what does it say when you totally reverse those roles? Men in that sort of vulnerable for Amelia and for Desdemona, especially, because there's only really two women in the work. Oh, and the mistress. There's most three, right? And everything else is run by the men. It's all about power and struggle, but also desire. I think Iago is totally jonesing for Othello. I mean, but that's just me. I think he's really this sort of, he hates him, but is he really in love with him?
I thought it was just textual canonical fact that Iago is Othello's ex. Like a jealous ex. That's the sort of vibe I've always got.
That's great. And that is a great way to, that would be an amazing thing to play. Absolutely. But yeah, I think the sexual tension there is huge.
Absolutely.
And having women sort of, I think that was the one thing we learned about 12th Night. It was so awesome to see the women in the company get a chance to do something they hadn't done. Roles written for men that are super expansive and not necessarily having to, do the typical or this or that. They took the ball and ran with it. It was exciting to see. And I think that we had that as well in Othello. It's just, I think I fell down as director there. I just sort of missed the mark. But I think I would like to come back to it and try it again with a longer.
I was going to say that was a long time ago. You were probably young in your directing career then.
Yeah.
Give it another go.
It was all a learning experience, but it is a play I'd like to come back to because there's some really gorgeous poetry in it, and it's tense. It's like all these different. There's constantly something bad happening, or someone's doing something really shitty, and trying to hide it, and all these machinations. It is a good piece, but it requires, I think, a great deal of work.
I want to say this before I forget because you mentioned The Haunting of Hill House earlier.
Oh, yeah.
I have not watched it myself, but I've had like 5 straight guests tell me to watch The Haunting of Hill House series.
The Haunting of Bly Manor, the sequel, is good.
Like, yeah.
Bly Manor is very good, but
Okay, I will check that out. But you should check out the film if you haven't seen it. It's a classic, and it's a great cast.
Definitely will.
On the extras, he talks about filming the exterior shots in infrared, I think, or something. He does something so that the bounce of the color or the definition of the film just really pops in a really odd way. And he did that on purpose. And the wallpaper in the house is just sort of like, who the hell would live in the house with I'm gonna be ill just walking down the hall.
John, we're not going to keep you all night. If Jason or Kelsey don't have anything else for you, I'll just end by asking, what do you have on the horizon? What are you working on?
The company's doing, we've got these 2 scripts, but what am I working on? I'm working on this concert with my friend Gordon Haramaki at San Jose State, trying to get all the film things together. Oh, and we're building a video for 19 Hand Horse, which is a musical group out here. Natalie Archangel was in my company and is a vocalist and has put together a band. She's been in the music business for a really long time, and they've just sort of rebranded themselves. And so with what is their name? This is bad. Bear Witness Film Group and myself working with them, we're sort of putting together music videos for them as best we can,
Right.
isolated and all of that. But I guess that's the big thing, has been able to try to learn a new medium, because no matter what happens, I think film is going to be an integral part to how we build theater now. So gotta learn the techniques.
Well said.
But thank you guys. I'm super honored that you think your audience is interested, and that's great. And I'm excited to know that Legend of Dragoon is so epic out there.
Even if they're not, we are.
The honor's all ours.
Yeah, the pleasure's ours, man. It was great.
I told my sister we were going to be talking to you, and she flipped out.
Oh, no way.
It's like her favorite video game.
Awesome. All right. I'll have to go back and look at all my exclamations of Thunder Rush and Father and all that good stuff.
It's been
Well,
great,
thank you,
John.
guys.
I'll definitely send you this when it's ready, and when you
Sweet.
get the stuff you're working on done, we'll love to talk about it.
Absolutely.
Are you
Okay.
have a great night.
You too, man. Thanks again.
All right, no problem.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you, John.